and the wind speeds are taking it very close to being a hurricane. So we want to get over to Dave. He's actually going to speak with the National Hurricane Center for the latest.
That's right. We're going to be talking to Ken Graham, the director of the National Hurricane Center. Of course, Ken was the meteorologist in charge of the National Weather Service office here in New Orleans and the Baton Rouge area as well for a number of years. And as we talk to him and try to get a little bit more of what we can expect out there. Ken, good morning to you. Not the way I wanted to talk to you, but appreciate all the help you're giving us and all this great information you have for us here across the New Orleans area.
Yeah, definitely, Dave. Good to be here, and there's a lot to talk about with all this rain and storm surge and the wind. So, yeah, it's definitely time to get ready for this big storm.
So we've been kind of reading here lately that the hurricane hunters flying into the latest mission into the storm have said it may have made a possible landfall and could even be a hurricane. Can you expand upon that?
I'll tell you, it's real close. I mean, we've been able to measure that 70-mile-an-hour wind. It's really close to a hurricane. And it's interesting to look on the radar. If you look at the center, it's just a large center. And just to the north of it, you get these little spiral spins coming out of it. So it's a large center. Part of it's on shore, part of it's off of shore. And it's interesting. We have been getting some questions about, well, there's a lot of wind, but I don't see a lot of rain around it. There's a lot of rain to the south, and you see the rain bands already setting up over on the Mississippi coast and Mobile. So, yeah, it's kind of a lopsided storm, but at the same time, the wind is there. We're measuring the wind, and the rain is still on the way.
Now, when you say it's on the way, we're talking about sort of midday through this afternoon through tonight into Sunday. Some of the rain totals I've seen have been kind of cut back on some of the models we've seen out there. What are you guys still saying out there? I mean, originally we were talking a lot higher rain totals, maybe not quite as much now thanks to the dry air.
Yeah, thanks to the dry air, you're just not getting a lot of that precipitation on the front end of this storm. But if you look at it, I mean, you've been showing it as well, Dave. I mean, look at all that moisture we still have in the Gulf of Mexico, and that there is what we're concerned about continuing to move north. And if you look at the rainfall totals, just because we're playing around with three or 4 inches in either direction, that doesn't change the fact that it's a dangerous situation, because that still is a forecast for some areas to get 15 to 20 inches of rain over a large area. 10 to 15 inches of rain. So still a dangerous situation. A lot of that's on the backside. So just because it doesn't happen at the beginning doesn't mean it's still not going to happen. So the next couple of days, it's a lot of rain. It's a slow moving storm.
Now, what advice would tell those viewers who are watching right now who are like, I'm waiting for this rain, I'm getting kind of complacent here, I'm getting uneasy, can I just go about my day? And the thing I've been trying to tell them is, it's coming. It's coming, and you have to be patient. And for those who really aren't patient, what else can we tell them? Like, you know what, this is what you need to be prepared for. This is why we've been prepared for the last couple of days.
Dave, I've been trying to communicate the exact same thing, and the only thing I've come up with is to show them this. I mean, to show them where the center is and show them how dry it is to the north. But then when you look at it in the Gulf, that looks ominous to me. I mean, that right there is precipitable waters, which is a measurement to how much moisture is in the atmosphere, is off the chart. That here is moving that direction. So you may be getting the winds. I mean, you can get, big time winds even without the rain. But that right there is headed north. Be patient, it's coming, and that's why we can't let our guard down whatsoever.
Now, expanding upon that, now we're talking heavy rain on the North Shore, and I know you lived up there when you were here, very familiar with the North Shore. All those local rivers right now are really low, not a lot of water in them, but they're expected to come significantly higher here. Based off of this rain totals, looks like potentially maybe August of 2016 levels with some of them. Are you seeing the same?
Well, and it is, and everybody has to realize, let's look at these, how we call them gradients. In other words, the distance between the highest totals and the lowest totals. Little wiggles matter, Dave. I mean, it's little teeny shifts can make all the difference in the world. So where that rain exactly sets up is really tough to tell. So this is the forecast, but everybody has to realize, depending on the track, depending on where things set up, this can shift left to right a little bit. So that's why we tell folks you have to be ready, whether it happens in one location versus 20 or 30 miles down the road. That's tough to tell ahead of time. So the preparedness part is everything. We all have to be prepared. We don't just prepare when you start seeing yourself in those highest totals.
Now, this was a unique storm setup from the very beginning, kind of coming from a little upper level wave or disturbance over land, curving its way across part of the southeast United States and into the Gulf. A lot of viewers have been asking here, wanting me to explain a lot. I'm trying to do the best with these happen. You get a trough that dives down, you get a cold front that moves into the south, and this time of year, that tail end of it, they can spin up. So this is nothing that's really unusual. We just haven't really seen it in recent times. What do you think?
Yeah, it definitely happened before. We've seen these old frontal boundaries park out in the Gulf of Mexico or even the Atlantic. We've seen that before, and a low pressure system develop on it and move up that front and become tropical. In this case, it was a trough of low pressure. It was just a little low pressure moved out of Georgia and Alabama into the Gulf, and that low pressure just slowly but surely started to get geared up and eventually made its way around into what we have as Barry. And interesting enough, you know, the models, and we've been forecasting this for about a week, which is pretty interesting. And we're looking at some of the verification, even 48 hours out. We're only about 32 miles off in this storm. So it's just amazing how far we've come being able to forecast it. You know, something from Georgia has become what we're dealing with in Louisiana.
And not only with the potential landfall, but you guys have done a fantastic job with the intensity. And that's kind of this one is a really messy storm from the get-go. And to be able to say, hey, we're thinking 75 and we're almost there. We may have been there, depending if there's winds mixed down. That's great, guy. I mean, the technology we talked about at the Hurricane Center when we talked before, that's one of the big strives you guys are working on over there in the Hurricane Center, is that intensity forecasts.
Yeah, well, over the years, we've got very good with the track. I mean, it's just become amazing how well we've done with that. And the intensity has been a struggle. We saw last year with Florence and also Michael, just a real struggle. Interesting with this one, I mentioned that 2-day out forecast. Actually, there was no error in the intensity. So this one was well forecast. The problem with it is it just doesn't have the same characteristics as you would see when you look up tropical storm in a textbook and say, hey, it's supposed to look like this. And then that doesn't look like that. So that's why the challenge with this one, the forecast is pretty good, but the challenge is communicating those impacts despite what you're seeing.
And one thing I've noticed in the graphic behind you there, for you guys have on your website, that's the expansive wind field we have right now from this. So those tropical storm force winds extend outward, almost 200 miles from the center.
Yeah, it's something that we've been working on for a long time to really show how much of the impact is outside the cone. Because remember, the cone is just where we expect the center to be 2/3 of the time, based on our error over the last 5 years. So the better we do, the smaller the cone. So this is an attempt to really show how many impacts are outside that cone. So that's the tropical storm force winds extending out. And think of the rain. We looked at the rainfall forecast, Dave, and that's a lot of that occurs on the right side, which is mostly outside the cone.
Now, what can you say to those watching right now? I mean, you're familiar with the area. If you can even localize a little more as we go forward throughout the rest of today and tonight, what do people need to be prepared for, and what should they do with their homes if they haven't prepared enough already?
I think that window to prepare is shrank down to about zero. We got to get ready. So one factor is going to be the rain, and it is not just the coast. As we move all this moisture northward, I mean, all those rivers, all the bayous are going to start filling up. Those drainage ditches that normally drain the water away from your home, when the water comes up, sometimes that could flow backward and get towards your home. So be prepared for that. Be prepared for that high water. And listen, you know, 83% of the fatalities over the last 3 years has been from that inland flooding, and over half of those in cars. So when the rain starts and we start getting the floods on the roads, you really can't tell what's road and what's ditch. So here's the deal. When the local officials are saying it's too dangerous to be outside, let's not drive in the floodwaters. Let's not lose lives in this storm. Let's be safe throughout the entire event.
All right. Thank you, Ken, so much. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you again later.
Sounds good.
All right, Ken and Dave, thank you very much.